The Antarctic has always represented a source of inspiration for authors of fiction and adventure novels. One of the most memorable passages of Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is the moment when his anti-hero, Captain Nemo, unfurls his vast black flag at the South Pole, claiming to be the first to have reached the beckoning goal. But it would be flesh and blood characters who would write the real adventure stories of the Antarctic. Shackleton's heroic attempts to reach the pole in a series of expeditions, none of them successful. The tragic death of Robert Falcon Scott at the pole, following the bitter discovery that Amundsen had beaten him to it by a matter of days. Finally, the efforts made by Vice Admiral Robert Byrd to establish a permanent U.S. presence in Antarctica, the research station known as Little America. But Antarctica always manages to escape the confines of textbooks and appears to be bent on haunting works of fiction. The errant seaman of Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner finds himself in an Antarctic realm filled with ghosts, while master horror writer H.P. Lovecraft, author of At the Mountains of Madness, describes the polar journey made by a scientific expedition. The trek results in the discovery of an unknown mountain range that conceals the existence of a nameless, ancient city built by the Old Ones. This primeval, non-human species met its end at the tentacles of its own creations, the huge and terrifying Shoggoths. The man who seldom ventured away from his hometown of Providence, Rhode Island, delivers a story so convincing that the Antarctic cold chills the reader's fingertips. It is precisely in Lovecraft's works that the purely fantastic becomes uncomfortably mixed with the factual, leading us to confront other polar mysteries of an equally ambiguous nature. Foremost among these is Nazi Germany's expedition to conquer Neuschwabenland, or what had formerly been known as Queen Maud's Land on most maps. The expedition and its goals have been the crucible for all manner of theories, each more outrageous than the last, regarding intraterrestrial empires, Nazi flying saucers, and the successful creation of supermen in hidden polar bases. Conspiracy theorists seek to bolster their speculation by referring to the sudden display of U.S. military force in the South Pole in the years following World War II, with the supposed aim of combating the forces defending the last Nazi stronghold. More recently, film spectaculars like John Carpenter's The Thing, 1982, and X-Files, Fight the Future, 1998, have employed the White Continent as a hideout for extraterrestrial forces, whether arrived by accident or as part of a grim conquest operation, and the efforts made by human protagonists to overcome said unknown quantities. Possibly inspired by this assortment of sources, belief in Atlantis has also found a new lost continent in which to nestle itself. After 17 years of intense research, British authors Rand and Rose Flemeth completed a work entitled When the Sky Fell, 1995. Their book did not seek to ascertain the location of the allegedly sunken continent, but rather of other lands where the survivors of such a catastrophe would have sought shelter. The Flemeth's studies led them to select two regions in separate continents, the environs of Lake Titicaca in the Peru-Bolivia highlands and Ethiopia's Lake Tana, suggesting that both of these areas were particularly suited for the reintroduction of agricultural techniques in the wake of a planetary disaster. Graham Hancock, author of Fingerprints of the Gods, 1995, has joined the Flemeths and other authors in supporting controversial scientific theories regarding the displacement of tectonic plates. As regards Antarctica, the theory suggests that the southernmost continent was located north of the present Antarctic Circle and could have been inhabited, featuring a climate and resources suitable for the development of a civilization. Could these researchers have solved the riddle of the mother culture we have come to identify with Plato's Atlantis? Whether Atlantis was located in Antarctica or not, it is worth bearing in mind the prophecies issued by Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. Aside from performing a number of cures while in a trance state, Cayce also gave us a series of readings regarding Atlantis which are studied to this very day. One of them made mention of an enormous crystal allegedly employed by the Atlanteans as a source of energy. Cayce predicted that said object would be rediscovered in the late 20th century, but without specifying its location. If the sleeping prophet's prophecies coincide with the theories put forth by the Flemeths and Graham Hancock, could the Lake Vostok anomaly be connected to the lost power source of the ancient Atlanteans? Early research into Lake Vostok indicated that the body of water had a depth of 2,000 feet, far deeper than any of the Great Lakes and half as deep as Asia's Lake Baikal, 5,000 feet, a length of 300 miles and a width of 50 miles. Contrary to what was initially believed, the lake received filtered light. Further investigations also detected the existence of geothermal sources which warmed the lake to an astonishing 50 degrees Fahrenheit, with hot spots of up to 65 degrees. Given these new discoveries regarding solar radiation and temperature, scientists suggested the possibility that the lake's encapsulated atmosphere purified itself through a complex interaction with water, and that the chances for vegetable life forms were very good. Research conducted by Russian scientist Ian Toskovoy, who vanished near the Vostok station in March 2000, on geothermal upboiling also hinted at an alternative means of purification and replenishment for the subterranean lake's atmosphere. Toskovoy's geothermal upboils were located in the so-called ice dunes, which appear to be formed by thousands of bubbles of air measuring between several feet to several hundred feet. However, the most intriguing news coming out of Antarctica had to do with the extremely powerful magnetic anomaly located in the northern end of the lake's coast, a discovery which would give rise to a number of conjectures and would be compared with the fictional TMA-1, Tycho Magnetic Anomaly 1, in the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey. The electronic newspaper Antarctic Sun, which soon became the main source of information on the Lake Vostok magnetic anomaly, stated that during the initial flight of the SOAR, Support Office for Aerophysical Research, aimed at conducting magnetic resonance imaging over the area, the magnetometer recorded an increase of 1,000 nanoteslas beyond the 60,000 nanoteslas which characterized the Vostok station. Scientists had expected to find magnetic anomalies in the range of 500 to 600 nanoteslas in areas where volcanic material could be located, but the ranges encountered were simply startling. This anomaly is so large that it cannot be the product of a daily change in the magnetic field, stated Michael Studinger, one of the researchers involved in the mapping endeavor. Also significant was the sheer size of the anomaly, 65 by 46 square miles. According to the mission's geological team, the anomaly's size and severity pointed to the fact that geological changes had taken place under the lake, suggesting the possibility that it was a place where the Earth's crust was thinner. Australian geologist Harry Mason summarized the subject thus: "The magnetic anomaly's sheer size and intensity suggest the presence of a large ultrabase component under this section of Lake Vostok at the surface of the continental crust rock, in other words, on the old surface prior to the ice formation." Using much less technical language, others noted that Mason's explanation matched the hypothesis suggested by Professor Thomas Gold in Australia's Nexus magazine. According to Professor Gold, the amount of methane and exotic gases such as xenon and argon could represent a direct threat to global climate, since they would come directly from the Earth's mantle using the geological features under Lake Vostok as chimneys. Aside from the danger this could represent for our planet's embattled atmosphere, the teams of scientists and technicians in charge of drilling through the methane dome would be in the first line of danger, since such an operation would likely result in a catastrophic explosion. The lunatic fringe didn't wait too long before chiming in on the Lake Vostok situation. The most outrageous rumors emanated not from the US but from Australia, where a website, Fortress Australia Outpost, indicated, or ranted, more properly, that the total population of Nazis in Antarctica now exceeded 2 million and that many of them had undergone plastic surgery in order to move about with greater ease through South America and conduct all manner of business transactions. Conspiracy theorists stoked the fire by saying that the polar Nazis had successfully stolen an intaglio press to forge dollars, in addition to having forged virtually undetectable pounds sterling. The monetary needs of the polar Nazi community were further supplemented by the gold stolen during the war and their ability to transmute base metals into gold. It was only logical, they argued, that the mystery of Lake Vostok was also directly related to the nefarious activities of the polar Nazis. The strange writings of the author known only by the surname Branton also resurfaced, especially one set of documents alleging that the Nazis had managed to build flying saucers and transfer them to Antarctica in 1944, and that the Nazi bases in the South Pole also included groups of renegade Pleiadians and men in black. A digression becomes necessary at this point. While the odds that Pleiadians and MIB are cooling their heels at an underground Antarctic base are slim to none, there is a factual basis to claims involving Nazi Germany's interest in the South Pole. In 1938, the hydroplane carrier Schwabenland left the German port of Hamburg for Antarctica, commanded by Albert Richter, a veteran of cold weather operations. The Richter expedition's scientists used their large Dornier airboats to explore the polar wastes, emulating ADM. Richard Byrd's own efforts a decade earlier. The German scientists discovered ice-free lakes with traces of vegetation and were able to land on them. It is widely believed that the Schwabenland's subsequent visits to the pole were aimed at scouting out a secret base of operations on the White Continent. A suitable location was found at the Hooghoffman Massif, which was hollowed out into a facility known only as Base 211. In 1947, Admiral Byrd would lead a task force of 13 surface ships and 4,000 soldiers to Antarctica as part of Operation High Jump. Although the expedition's avowed intention was the testing of military hardware under extreme conditions, the suggestion that it was a combat operation aimed at dislodging Nazi troops from their last redoubt has always floated in the air. At one point, the torrent of email messages regarding Lake Vostok suggested the belief that almost everyone was involved in the mystery. First Lady Laura Bush was allegedly in charge of coordinating shipments of unknown artifacts headed for the Antarctic, and that the mystery also involved a UFO. Other remarks indicated that 4 experts in Antarctic mountaineering had been sent to Lake Vostok as part of a secret mission. In early March 2001, a U.S. channeler known as Lady Kajana replied to a series of questions regarding the mystery of Lake Vostok. Regarding the nature of the magnetic anomaly, she declared that long before the Antarctic became icebound, the continent had been used as a landing site by extraterrestrials. The ever-benevolent aliens built what we would call an observatory, explained the channeler, equipped with a signaling device capable of broadcasting coded messages. More and more such observatories would be discovered in coming months, and Earth governments would try to seize them. Lady Kajana added that the observatory contained vast crystals which put forth a certain kind of magnetism, which had been employed as a guidance system so that large spaceships could land at that location. But that wasn't all. The magnetic anomaly also served as a port of entry to other dimensions. Vice Admiral Byrd had apparently stumbled into one of them and had radioed back reports of seeing a completely different, verdant landscape under his aircraft. With proper knowledge of this equipment, a human being would be able to travel in time and access information stored in distant places. But we will be kept from doing so until our governments have put aside the arms race and reach a more peaceful level of coexistence. The pace of shrinkage of Antarctic glaciers has been accelerating. Especially during the past 5 years has the shrinkage been rapid. Antarctica is a continent, an enormous land area covered by ice. As its snowy cover disappears, what might this continent reveal? Easter Island-type statues? Stonehenge-type ruins? This farthest southern land has long been a blank slate inviting speculation. In Edgar Allan Poe's strange novel, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, the adventurer finds that, beyond a certain latitude, the climate begins to get warmer. This echoes claims in a later book, The Hollow Earth, by Dr. Raymond Bernard. Dumrova, a Russian explorer, is therein quoted as referring to the memorable December 12 discovery of heretofore unknown land beyond the South Pole by Captain Sir George Hubert Wilkins. Amadeo Giannini confirmed indeterminable land extent at the South Pole in his suppressed 1959 book, Worlds Beyond the Poles. Building upon Poe's earlier work, H.P. Lovecraft told a fantastic tale in his, At the Mountains of Madness. An Antarctic expedition finds a Cyclopean lost city dating from before Precambrian times. 2 explorers investigating weird hieroglyphics in underground caverns encounter blind, 6-foot-tall albino penguins. unearthed as evidence of a long-gone alien civilization, which had retreated to the polar region. Deep underground, a final discovery drives one of the explorers insane and they both narrowly escape with their lives. But pari passu with such fanciful tales arose other polar prose not definitively fictional. With such accounts, it is uncertain where fact ends and fiction begins. The essential guidebook to various intriguing literature regarding Antarctica is Jocelyn Goodwin's Arctos, The Polar Myth, 1993. Mentioned is a German Antarctic expedition to Queen Maud Land in 1938 to 1939 which discovered a group of low-lying hills sprinkled with many lakes and completely free of ice and snow. A later key incident was the surrender, in 1945, at Mar del Plata, Argentina, of a German submarine, U-530. This surrender is also covered in Reich of the Black Sun by Joseph P. Farrell. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz is reported to have stated, in 1943, that the German submarine fleet is proud of having built for the Führer, in another part of the world, a Shangri-La on land, an impregnable fortress. Later, at the Nuremberg trials, Admiral Dönitz boasted of an invulnerable fortress, a paradise-like oasis in the middle of eternal ice. In 1946, the U.S. government proceeded with urgency to launch a military expedition to Antarctica, Operation High Jump. The operation was commanded by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd. The expedition encircled the German-claimed territory of Neuschwabenland, Neuschwabialand. Following aerial reconnaissance by Byrd and others, in which 4 escort craft vanished, the project was abruptly halted. Byrd was returned to Washington, D.C., debriefed, and his personal and operational logs remain classified to this day. Farrell, OPCIT. But before the apparent clampdown, odd reports appeared briefly, for example in the Chilean newspaper, El Mercurio. Farrell, in his book, reproduces a photostat of the article, dated March 5, 1947, by Lee Van Atta, who had accompanied Byrd. A portion of the article is translated as follows. Byrd announced to me today that it is necessary for the United States to put into effect defensive measures against enemy airmen which come from the polar regions. The Admiral further explained that he did not have the intention to scare anyone, but the bitter reality is that in case of a new war the United States would be in a position to be attacked by flyers which could fly with fantastic speed from one pole to another. Other portions of the El Mercurio article. Admiral Richard E. Byrd warned today that it is necessary for the United States to adopt protective measures against the possibility of an invasion by hostile aircraft originating from the polar regions. Byrd, the fantastic pressure with which the world is now dealing is an object lesson learned during the Antarctic exploration now ending. The Admiral declared a necessity to remain in a state of alert and vigilance as the best protection against invasion. Byrd's remarks are cryptic. Do they warn of the need to defend against future weapons technology or against something already present at the time? Iconoclastic magazine editor Ray Palmer commented on discoveries made by Byrd, quoting him as having stated, "We have penetrated an unknown and mysterious land which does not appear on today's maps." Again, the statement is either relatively mundane, or it is laced with deeper significance. Return now to the non-committal news that shrinkage of Antarctic glaciers has been accelerating. A blip on the radar screen to many, evidence of environmental problems to some, fraught with potential meaning to a few, is something cooking there, at the Mountains of Madness? In 1929, during renovations of the old imperial palace in what is now Istanbul, formerly Constantinople, a painted, parchment map, drawn on a gazelle skin was found, dated in the month of Muharrem, in the Muslim year 919, AD 1513, and signed by an admiral of the Turkish Navy, Piri ibn Haji Mehmed, known as Piri Reis. Research showed that it was a genuine document drawn in 1513 by Piri Reis in the 16th century. His passion was cartography. His high rank within the Turkish Navy allowed him to have a privileged access to the Imperial Library of Constantinople. Piri Reis' own commentary indicates that some of his source maps were from the time of Alexander the Great, 332 BC. The Piri Reis map shows the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and the northern coast of Antarctica. The northern coastline of Antarctica is perfectly detailed. The most puzzling, however, is not so much how Piri Reis managed to draw such an accurate map of the Antarctic region 300 years before it was discovered, but that the map shows the coastline under the ice. Geological evidence confirms that the latest date Queen Maud Land could have been charted in an ice-free state is 4000 BC. On July 6, 1960, the U.S. Air Force responded to Professor Charles H. Hapgood of Keene College, specifically to his request for an evaluation of the ancient Piri Reis map. July 6, 1960. Subject: Admiral Piri Reis map. 2. Professor Charles H. Hapgood. Keene College, Keene, New Hampshire. Dear Professor Hapgood, your request of evaluation of certain unusual features of the Piri Reis map of 1513 by this organization has been reviewed. The claim that the lower part of the map portrays the Princess Martha coast of Queen Maud Land, Antarctic, and the Palmer Peninsular, is reasonable. We find that this is the most logical and in all probability the correct interpretation of the map. The geographical detail shown in the lower part of the map agrees very remarkably with the results of the seismic profile made across the top of the ice cap by the Swedish-British Antarctic expedition of 1949. This indicates the coastline had been mapped before it was covered by the ice cap. The ice cap in this region is now about a mile thick. We have no idea how the data on this map can be reconciled with the supposed state of geographical knowledge in 1513. Harold Z. Ohlmeyer, Lt. Colonel, U.S. Air Force Commander. The official science has been saying all along that the ice cap which covers the Antarctic is millions of years old. The Piri Reis map shows that the northern part of that continent has been mapped before the ice did cover it. That should make think it has been mapped million years ago, but that's impossible since mankind did not exist at that time. Further and more accurate studies have proven that the last period of ice-free condition in the Antarctic ended about 6,000 years ago. There are still doubts about the beginning of this ice-free period, which has been put by different researchers everything between year 13,000 and 9,000 BC. The question is: who mapped the Queen Maud Land of Antarctic 6,000 years ago? Which unknown civilization had the technology or the need to do that? To draw his map, Piri Reis used several different sources, collected here and there along his journeys. He himself has written notes on the map that give us a picture of the work he had been doing on the map. He says he had been not responsible for the original surveying and cartography. His role was merely that of a compiler who used a large number of source maps. He says then that some of the source maps had been drawn by contemporary sailors, while others were instead charts of great antiquity, dating back up to the 4th century BC or earlier. Dr. Charles Hapgood, in his book Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, 1979, said that it appears that accurate information has been passed down from people to people. It appears that the charts must have originated with a people unknown and they were passed on, perhaps by the Minoans and the Phoenicians, who were, for 1,000 years and more, the greatest sailors of the ancient world. We have evidence that they were collected and studied in the Great Library of Alexandria, Egypt, and the compilations of them were made by the geographers who worked there. Piri Reis had probably come into possession of charts once located in the Library of Alexandria, the well-known most important library of the ancient times. According to Hapgood's reconstruction, copies of these documents and some of the original source charts were transferred to other centers of learning, and among them to Constantinople. Then in 1204, year of the Fourth Crusade, when the Venetians entered Constantinople, those maps begun to circulate among the European sailors. Most of these maps, Hapgood goes on, were of the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. But maps of other areas survived. These included maps of the Americas and maps of the Arctic and Antarctic oceans. It becomes clear that the ancient voyagers traveled from pole to pole. Unbelievable as it may appear, the evidence nevertheless indicates that some ancient people explored Antarctic when its coasts were free of ice. It is clear too, that they had an instrument of navigation for accurately determining the longitudes that was far superior to anything possessed by the peoples of ancient, medieval, or modern times until the second half of the 18th century. In 1953, a Turkish naval officer sent the Piri Reis map to the U.S. Navy Hydrographic Bureau. To evaluate it, M.I. Walters, the chief engineer of the Bureau, called for help Arlington H. Mallory, an authority on ancient maps, who had previously worked with him. After a long study, Mallory discovered the projection method used. To check out the accuracy of the map, he made a grid and transferred the Piri Reis map onto a globe. The map was totally accurate. He stated that the only way to draw a map of such accuracy was the aerial surveying, but who, 6,000 years ago, could have used airplanes to map the Earth? The Hydrographic Office couldn't believe what they saw. They were even able to correct some errors in the present day's maps. The precision on determining the longitudinal coordinates, on the other hand, shows that to draw the map it was necessary to use the spheroid trigonometry, a process supposedly not known until the middle of 18th century. The way the Piri Reis map shows the Queen Maud Land, its coastlines, its rivers, mountain ranges, plateaus, deserts, bays, has been confirmed by a British-Swedish expedition to Antarctic, as said by Olhemeyer in his letter to Hapgod. The researchers, using sonar and seismic soundings, indicated that those bays and rivers etc., were underneath the ice cap.